Inflation has been a dark force for U.S. citizens, and the majority are trying hard to survive in harsh economic times. However, inflation has recently grown into a complex model where price hikes can be falsified to reap the maximum benefits from buyers. On the other hand, people are unaware that they are being scammed since numerous individuals can't figure out real and unreal inflation. The cost of basic needs has changed, and it has become the new normal for people to go deeper into their pockets to satisfy human wants. With this, we uncover the world of inflation and the issues surrounding it. Inflation refers to the hike in cost of products over a particular duration of time. Interestingly, the inflation rate varies with different countries, and this is where the difference between real inflation and unreal inflation comes in. Real inflation is where the inflation rates are perceived as normal and relatively under control. Similarly, real inflation doesn't bring hefty damage to the economy because many people can adjust to the cost of living. A good example of a country that is experiencing real inflation is China, where the inflation rate stands at only 0.5%. On the other hand, unreal inflation is where the inflation rates tend to be more questionable and perceived as suspicious due to the sudden and unaccounted for rise. One example of a country experiencing unreal inflation is the U.S., where inflation broke a 40-year record when it hit 9.1% in 2022. Furthermore, the economic woes still bite hard in the U.S., as a recent report from the Census Bureau indicates a sharp rise in the poverty rate as the scale hits 12.4% from an initial 7.8%. Considering the real inflation of the U.S. is at 3%, how that percentage increased to 9 or 7% in the last 2 years raises a lot of questions. The unreal inflation in the U.S. briefly summarizes the incompetent leadership of President Joe Biden. Shockingly, the cost of energy and food was 13.4% higher during his current reign. Biden's policies, such as increased spending, have aroused inflation, and to make matters worse, Biden wants to increase the federal budget. In addition, Biden imposed new energy taxes, which explains why fuel has been skyrocketing lately. And by now, we know the biggest beneficiary of taxes is the government, since every penny is going straight to their pockets. With this, I'm starting to think that Joe Biden is using inflation as an excuse to deliberately increase the cost of living. Even though Joe Biden has played a role in inflation, he has yet to learn and correct his strategies for dealing with the situation. Instead of reducing things like taxes, spending, and borrowing, he's shifted his attention to playing the blame game. In fact, he is pointing fingers at businesses for causing this economic storm. What Joe Biden doesn't know is that most businesses protect their customers. Businesses know that high prices will chase their customers away. Hence, they will try to make the prices of goods fair. Or if there is an increase in cost, businesses will try to set a limit where consumers will not get hurt. But to some extent, Biden has a point here. Yet again, we can never rule out the fact that a few businesses can take advantage of tough economic times to adjust the prices of goods since they want high profit margins. This happens especially in big fish companies that have a loyal customer base and seemingly face less competition from other rival firms. Since such big fish companies know they have a good customer retention, they end up pocketing large sums of money even when they sell their products twice or thrice the actual prices. But when these big fish companies are asked why the prices of their products are high, they always use the scapegoat of the high cost of raw materials. Ironically, you'll be shocked that these businesses obtain raw materials at a cheap cost, and they usually use inflation to keep the prices of their products elevated. When you think about it, it all turns out to be a lose-lose situation for an ordinary U.S. citizen. Similarly, the most vulnerable victims of inflation are neither the government nor business, but the middle class and the poor. The government and businesses are exploiting us as they hibernate under the inflation excuse. At the end of it all, we get manipulated to buy goods at high prices because we believe inflation is taking a toll on the economy. The fact that the inflation rate can be exaggerated to an unreal margin makes it more vicious. This means that we shall go deeper into our pockets to give businesses enormous profits as well as enlarge government revenue while we, the common man, suffer. With inflation, putting food on the table will now be a bigger problem as the price of agricultural products has gone up. To describe how serious food inflation is, there was a 10.4% increase in food prices alone as far as 2022 is concerned. Even with the current food inflation of about 3% at the end of 2023, many people are still struggling to make ends meet. With this in mind, let's focus on the specific foods that have skyrocketed recently. Animal products and protein prices keep increasing with time. One good example of this category is meat. The price of meat is currently accelerating towards $8 per pound, while it was initially around $4 per pound in the second half of 2023. Proteins like butter and dairy prices hiked by 31.4% and 21% respectively, as margarine headed towards a 43.8% increase. In addition, eggs have gone up by 59.9%. Vegetables like lettuce registered a 24.9% hike, and flour scaled towards a 23.4% increase. All these are representations of how food inflation is making prices jump ridiculously. With this, are we headed towards a hungry nation? Aside from food, gas prices have gone a notch higher, and this means that vehicle lovers will have to keep their cars in the garage, or else they'll have to pay more. Recently, around last August, fuel prices reported a 10.6% increase, which means that the price of a gallon is currently at $3.80 from the initial $3.56, which was the price before July. Shockingly, gas prices made the annual inflation of the U.S. increase to 3.7%, and this defines how gas is crucial to the U.S. economy. Besides soaring gas prices, lighting your house has also proven to be expensive. In fact, a report by the Energy Information Administration states that household power supply costs accelerated towards a 2.5% increase, as they stated the prices adjusted due to the high cost of gas. After reflecting on the rising prices of goods and services in the U.S., should we believe that inflation is real, or is there a hidden agenda behind inflation? Well, inflation is normal in any economy, but the fact that price margins are adjusted at a fast pace makes this questionable. Have you noticed inflation only targets necessities, which are things you can't do without, such as food? In reality, most of these price hikes are centered on greed for money and the abuse of monopoly power. Monopolistic power is the reason why most inflation rates are planned. These powerful corporate men know that their businesses are booming since they have dominated the market for years. Hence, they are aware that their consumers will buy from them regardless. With this, they take advantage of you since they already know your mind is programmed to buy from them. These wealthy corporations always have the inflation response as their answer in case you are inquisitive about why their price is high. Most shoppers know inflation as the increase in the price of goods over time, but many of them have never dug down extensively to examine the deep information about inflation. And that's where these business moguls catch us. At the end of it all, many buyers come to a mutual consensus about buying something at a ridiculous price because they have been conditioned to think it's normal to go deep into their pockets during inflation. In a real sense, these wealthy corporations maneuver around the inflation excuse because they want to maximize the profit of each product that is sold in the market. What makes these corporations more powerful is the fact that the monopolistic nature of their businesses gives them an advantageous edge over their rivals. For instance, if these wealthy corporations had competitive rivals, many of them would sell their products at a friendlier price since they knew they were fighting with them for a customer's attention. But now that these corporations know they have a monopolistic power, they use that influence to exploit and manipulate us to buy from them. Over time, the customer gets robbed, while these business moguls swim into more wealth. Another contradictory thing that raises eyebrows about inflation is President Biden's speech at the White House in 2022. At one time, Biden announced that the inflation rate was 0%. Well, in 2022, the inflation rate was about 9%. But how did that figure reduce to 0% in a span of months? Isn't this strange, to be honest? At least, if there was a decrease in inflation, we could have opted for 5% or maybe 3%. I mean, the economy of the U.S. is not sharp enough to bring inflation to 0% within months, considering inflation has been the biggest cry for Americans in the last 5 years. Generally, I think it's time we dig deeper into knowing about inflation, or otherwise we'll get fooled and used for many years to come.